Hello and welcome to the weather forecast.
Hello.
This is our last episode for the whole year. As you know, December is here. We may do this next year. We're really enjoying them and we're learning a lot, and I think people seem to be enjoying them as well. But it does take quite a lot of our time.
It does, and we're ramping up production on Game 3.
Okay, but don't... More on that soon. But for now...
I didn't say anything.
For now... Actually, we have something more important to talk about, which is that we're terribly rubbish at this.
Yeah.
Last week, okay, I'm actually...
everything wrong.
Genuinely... Well, I'm embarrassed by it because I kind of felt like we were quite good at this until last week. But I'm also happy about it because some games did much better than we anticipated.
Yeah.
But I'm also
really interesting outcomes.
Confused by certain games. So let's get into it. We should probably just explain for anyone seeing this for the first time that this is a series where we look at the top 10 upcoming games on Steam and we try and estimate how they will do at launch based on publicly available data. Week 1 is a very good indicator of general success. You make the most of your sales in the first week of sale, and it's the first time that your game comes into real contact with the real world and people are either going to give you money for it or not. But this is not a judgment on the quality of games, and we're not using anything that you couldn't do at home watching this. All of this data is available. We're not using secret dev intel.
I don't know why I just did that weird thing with my mouth that looked like I was catching flies.
Were you bored when I was explaining things?
No, I think I was thinking about how lovely my wife was. And I wanted to eat her up like a fly.
Okay.
Obviously we don't have access to people's sales data, so what I was going to say is we use, which is pretty standard, number of reviews as a proxy for sales, because it is broadly accepted that there is, you see one review on a game for every 30 to 50 units it sells.
Ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to recap all the things we got wrong from last episode. So buckle up. All right. The first one is Follow the Meaning. This was the beautifully illustrated, odd art style point and click mystery game that looked quite like the Rusty Lake games. I think it was actually endorsed by them, even though it's a different developer. And we estimated...
the publisher was the same.
Was it the publisher?
Yeah.
No, we made the mistake last time. The publisher had only published one of the Rusty Lake games.
Right.
But there was a Rusty Lake connection, and I think that's the clearest kind of connection for anybody who has heard of those games. We estimated in between 80 and 81 reviews, and after week 1 it did.
319 reviews. I'm delighted by this. I really like the look of the game. I didn't think it was going to do any numbers, and it did. But the 22 languages might have made a difference. Which is really good. And the
94% rating is astonishing as well. So they absolutely smashed it.
This close to overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah, keep going, guys. You'll get there. This one. Coach's New Journey. Now, this required the porn bell. It wasn't super explicit, but it was implicit porn. But it was funny. And as far as I could tell, it seemed to have some sort of background in some sort of internet forum.
I did a tiny bit of research on this.
Tiny.
There is an artist called Red Cat or Red 7 Cat who has 250,000 followers on Twitter and a decently successful Patreon.
Right. Because there was a gag about this art style looks familiar and I didn't understand it. So
and
that's why.
Some reference to Goonas in the comments or the reviews. So I don't know if this is a something awful thing or if that's a different way the term is used now or what. But yeah, clearly there's an internet phenomenon.
So as you can tell from the preamble, we did better than we thought.
Yeah.
We estimated between 32 and 84 reviews, and in week 1 it got
1,130 reviews and 96% positive.
So
overwhelmingly positive rating.
What the hey-ho? As a benchmark, we always say that anywhere between 100 and 500 reviews week 1 is a solid indie success. Obviously, this depends hugely on your team size and how much money you put into the game and your marketing push and all this kind of stuff. So, one person's I got 100 reviews in week 1 and I'm just delighted, as another person's I got 100 reviews in week 1 and I have to go out of business now. But broadly speaking, that's the kind of bucket that you would expect to see an indie game that did well at launch do in week 1. So this has already done double that. Did better than Book of Hours did at launch. So what I'm hearing is we need to make a porn game.
It was free.
Ah, yes, it was. But then still leaving reviews is interesting.
It is. So a couple more details I dug up because I was astonished. This is a much bigger success than we expected.
Yeah.
It's I saw people in the reviews and the comments saying, "Why is this game free? I'd happily pay a few dollars for it." Which is, so I think it felt generous that you got a chunk of obviously gameplay made with love.
I mean, the trailer was funny. I'm not into porn games particularly, although I totally believe that they should exist and everyone should.
I remember, trailers don't often make me laugh. This one did.
Yeah, and I was kind of like, oh well, this is obviously a bit porny, whatever. And the trailer started, and I was like, oh, I'm kind of convinced.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're doing something right.
And apparently, the artist did this as or the people behind it. I'm not sure how many people actually made it. Did it as kind of a trial to maybe do something a bit bigger in the future. In which case, this is a great launchpad for that.
Yeah, smashed it. Inexplicably, well done. Third game we talked about last week is Hard Chip. Now this was the simulatory make your own microchip board thing game, and we estimated between 30 and 37 reviews. Again, wide margin there, and it got
14.
With 100% success, 100%
with
positive.
100% positive. Yeah, so this is the one we were least wrong on so far. It just didn't have enough buzz, and it looked a bit puzzly. I'm surprised it didn't get more love, given how clearly beloved it was by people who actually played it. But
what I always say at this point is, I think we broadly speaking got it right, because it did fewer numbers than we estimated, but it's the same bucket, and you're never going to get this totally correct. The 100% positive rating is a really good thing for the developers, even if they're disappointed in the units sold, because what it means is that people like the game, and so their problem is not make the game better, but their problem is make it either more generally interesting for a wider base, or get more eyeballs on it, which is things like marketing and advertising, but are not about actually making the game better. So I think it definitely could be improved if they want to, in terms of the actual units sold. But yeah, as you say, it just didn't have the buzz. Now onto a very different one, Toaster Side.
So I predicted 14 reviews week one, and Lottie predicted 40, and it ended up with 23. So we got this one broadly right, but I think that this one was, well, it could have caught fire, and it didn't caught fire long, because it's about a toaster exploding, and what we said at the time is that it looks charming, and the devs obviously put a lot of effort into it, but it just didn't have the traction, and this reflects just not having the traction. 100% positive reviews, though. People clearly liked what they saw, and I think for a game that was clearly made with love for not very much money. I in the days when I used to give advice to people who wanted to make games, I used to say your second game might make a profit. Assume your first game won't, and I hope this guy goes on to make a second game.
The Cold White. This was your chopping down treesies in the first few seconds of the trailer survival sim thing. We estimated between 74 and 90 reviews week one, and it got
20.
And unfortunately, it's mixed as well, 60%.
Yeah, I think it's just quite hard to make money out of a chopping trees game these days. There have been a couple before, both before we started doing the show and after, where I estimated slightly better results because I was used to survival games doing well on Steam. I think my instincts are just a couple of years out of date. It needs to be significant to draw people's attention.
There's so much competition.
Exactly. I also have this increasing intuition that Turkish games, this was a Turkish developer, and Australian games seem to do a bit worse than I'd expect from the numbers. I don't know if that's some sort of promotional difficulty. I don't know if it's some sort of cultural thing, but there seems to be anecdotally a bit of a downdraft from that.
Which is not a
it's not in no way a comment on the quality of Turkish and Australian games. I think they might be fighting some sort of uphill battle for poorly understood reasons, or maybe it's just been malign stars in the ones I've seen.
Okay, now I hope everyone's sitting down, because I'm sitting down, but even I'm not ready for this. This is a game called Atlas, which was sort of a platformy, action-adventure-y, Euro anthropomorphic fox with boobs game. And it was launched into early access as well, which we always say is a slight depressor in terms of reviews, because some people wait, wishlist and wait until 1.0. So we thought, even despite EA, it was going to do somewhere between 150 and 500 reviews. So bang in that window that we mentioned earlier of this is a successful indie game. And at the end of week one, Alexis, what happened to it?
So Lottie guessed 150 reviews, and I said, "Oh no, I think actually this has got something. I know it's not our kind of thing, but this really might go places. I think it might go as high as 500 reviews, and it actually got."
Don't make me say it.
4,023 reviews
with 98% positive.
There's a lot of fairies on Steam, Lottie.
Is that actually what this is? Is the success of this game fundamentally down to furries?
I mean, somebody in the comments on our vid last week.
Over to the experts in the comments.
No, but I think it clearly is a furry thing. To what degree it's just because it's a furry thing. To what degree it's actually a charming game with a good social context and fun mechanics, I don't know, because I'm going to be honest, I haven't played it. But
that's astonishing. I mean,
it's a real success.
I think there must be multiple things that we are not aware of. So one, it could be fairies. Two, it could be just a really well-made game. Mm-hmm. But even really well-made games do not get 4,000 reviews and we won.
Yeah.
So three, there could be a really effective marketing push. Somebody could have lots of money behind the scenes that we have no idea about, who is actually, performing a really successful marketing push, or it's been picked up by an incredible streamer. I don't understand.
I favour who knew I'd favour a system hypothesis? I think I always say there's an inverted bell curve effect. Not when you got. I don't mean inverted bell curve. I mean that games with a co-op element, with a multiplayer element, often go big or go home, and generally they go home, because you are competing with other games in a more... you're not just competing with other games for the player, you're competing with other games for the player and all of their friends. For a co-op game to work, you need people to come in numbers. But if they do come in numbers, then that lights a fire. So I think this one, unusually, whether because of the quality of the game, because of the existing community, because of the furry factor, just reached enough numbers that it caught fire. That's my guess.
So,
really
please
interesting.
Don't lose all your faith in us as developers. This is just not at all our thing. But this is the wrongest we've ever been, and I'm really embarrassed. Moving swiftly on, Lost but Found.
We were pretty much as wrong about this in terms of order of magnitude. But Lost but Found was a sort of hidden object-esque game with a bit of passports, please.
Papers,
from
please.
the sorry,
Papers,
paper, please. I'm sorry. Yes, from the same developer and publisher who made Dice and Fold. And I said last week, I really underestimated Dice and Fold. I thought it'd do much worse than it did.
That was the roguelike deck builder thing that we reviewed a few months ago.
So maybe I've underestimated this one too. So I bumped up my guesses.
But that meant that we both landed on exactly the same number, which was we estimated 50 reviews week one, and in reality, it got
640.
Which is mega.
Which is really good. Really good. 77% reviews in the mostly positive band. But, it's a solid success for something that I thought looked a bit like a Flash game. But I did say...
I would say stonking success.
I could see the loop. Yes, I think stonking is fair. I can see the loop, and I kind of felt there was something there. So this is the one that I assigned as my wild card.
I know, I'm annoyed about it.
I feel like I might have missed something here.
I think this is the first wild card that actually has paid up.
I think it is.
I got Mega Loot. That was my successful wild card.
Again, another sort of a game made to a very specific end that obviously delighted the people it worked for.
So yeah, congratulations, absolutely brilliant, well done. I'm glad that you did better than we thought the numbers were implying. And again, this is one of the really nice things about game dev, particularly on Steam, is that often the numbers that we put through our algorithms and come out with in terms of estimated reviews in the first week of sale, that they can change massively, because what that means is how many people have currently expressed some sort of interest in your game. And one of the lovely things about the way that games launch on Steam is if you get into the popular upcoming list, then for a brief and glorious moment you're presented by Steam to literally everybody who happens to be looking at the Steam upcoming releases on the front page of Steam. So you get this sudden massive influx of eyeballs and attention that indie devs certainly often struggle to generate themselves. So this can be a moment that games that maybe have been predicted something like 50 reviews in the first week of sale can massively exceed those expectations, because suddenly just more people are seeing it. And if you've made a good game that's got a good hook and has been presented well, Steam players are like, yes, give me that thing. So that's a really lovely opportunity where indies are kind of on a level playing field with all the AAAs for once, because we get the same opportunity to impress people without having to spend bazillions of pounds, which we don't have. Next game, Sin Slayer's Reign of the Eighth. Now, this was the inheritor of an existing game.
There was this complicated backstory where the original publisher had been banned by Steam for reasons unclear. Banned by Steam ? We don't know that's true, but it seems to be.
It was the publisher, not the developer.
It was the publisher, not the developer, yes. And the developer had apparently, according to the developer, managed to get the right back to the publisher recently and now put it out. And I thought, it's got a following. It looks like solid work. I guess 70 reviews week one, and you guessed 44, and it got
29
with the 75% positive review score. So decent success. I hope they keep going, and there's enough traction here to make me think they could absolutely keep going, and especially if that 75% suggests there's room for improvement. So if they improve it, they can bring up their numbers. It's obviously had a troubled development cycle, so I'm not surprised.
So here's a weird one. This is our penultimate game from last episode. This is Wild Country. Now, this was a clearly very polished, I think it was described as cozy, competitive, deck-buildy card game thing, but it looked really expensively made and had a sort of charming high-end trailer and all this stuff. We estimated between 25 and 34 reviews just because it didn't seem to have huge amounts of buzz behind the scenes, even though it did seem to have quite a high budget, and it got. And
I think it's worth saying I was sceptical about cozy competitive as a genre. I think that pulls in different directions. But yeah, I estimated 25, you estimated 34, and it got
8. Only 8, which is a shame. I don't know what has gone there. So it means it's not enough reviews for Steam to generate a general sense of positivity. I think all the reviews were positive.
All but one were positive. Small. There was one that complained about bugs.
Right.
And I mean, my heart goes out to the devs. I think they had publisher money, so I hope they're okay.
But it's got to hurt.
But it's got to hurt. I noticed I looked into it a bit. They did a patch every day during week one, which might mean that there were problems with the game at launch. But we didn't see people complaining about bugs, so I don't know if there were a lot of problems. I think they looked quite engaged, and it really looked like they were doing a lot of the things that you are generally supposed to do. They were clearly active in the forums. It was a very polished game. They presumably had some marketing help because the trailer really polished. It's just tough out there.
This is the dark side of what I was saying earlier. Lost but Found is an example of the kind of flipping the coin effect of launching a game on Steam these days, going well, because it massively exceeded expectations, which is fantastic. But equally, Wild Country, it didn't appear to launch with any game-breaking technical issues. It didn't appear to, screw up the pricing and go out at £100 per copy. But it flipped the coin and it didn't go well for it, which is why we're always terrified of launch. Every developer is terrified of launch, because even if you've got a massive following and you're super established and all the signs are pointing to this is going to go well, you just never know. So I hope that those devs are doing all right. Like you said, they've got publisher money, which means they're probably fine. I don't think any of them are going to be in serious difficulty, but emotionally it will have taken a toll. So our thoughts are with you guys.
I saw a game come out a few weeks back which had done pretty well in early access, and it left early access, and unfortunately the dev made one of the updates tanked performance, so it really hammered their launch. So it's just it's tough out there. Last one
from last episode is Claymores of the Lost Kingdom. This was another roguelike deck builder from a dev that specialised in card games. We estimated, again, a wide variety between 33 and 35, and at launch it did
57. So this is a solo dev working in a co-working space, who I remember being engaged, and it was obviously, I said the vibe. And only 71% positive review score, but
which is still positive.
It's still positive, and I was going to say earlier, calling back to what you were saying earlier, Lottie, that you get this opportunity then to grow and thrive. If you're a solo dev, and you can improve stuff and listen to feedback and crank up that review score, that means there's room for it to grow, rather than if you're a big dev and you've got to pay a big team. And the launch is bad, it might go quite badly. So I feel encouraged by this, and I suspect the future looks bright for this one.
Do you know what the future doesn't look bright for?
No.
The protagonist of the first new game.
Or before we go on to the first new game.
Oh, it's such a good segue.
It was. I'm sorry, but I wanted to get a point. We can pretend afterwards that you didn't say that. And you can
No,
do
we
it
can't because I'm not very good at video editing.
I didn't mean. We could use our acting powers.
I'm not very good at that either.
So, but I had an insight to share. I was really struck by how many of the big successes from this last week were not things we think of as Steam games. There's a point and click. There's a furry
PS2
social
era platform adventure.
There's whatever the hell Cota's New Journey was.
Yeah.
And there's Lost But Found.
Yeah.
And none of those are games you look at and say this is the kind of thing the stereotypical Steam gamer would play or that Steam will eat up. So there's just a million flowers blooming out there. It's a really extraordinary range of creative things. Anyway, tell me about the protagonist.
No, I'm having a huff about that now. I wanted to say as well, I grew up in America, so if anybody's listened to this in America, maybe you had the same book when you were a kid. I had this book of stories, and one of the stories in it was called something like The Adventure of Button Nose, and his whole story was he was a little kid in a village, and an evil witch came and took over the village, and the only way you could defeat the evil witch was by showing her something that she had never seen before. So every day in the throne room, the evil witch would sit on the throne, and people would come in and try and show her these magical things that they pulled from the sea, like these strange fish or a painting of dreams they'd had, and the witch, being wise and evil, would know all of these things, so the enchantment over the village was not broken until Button Nose came up one day and offered her an apple. And the witch goes, ha, you stupid idiot, why offer me an apple? I've seen apples, they're classic. And he just cut open the apple and showed her the insides, and because that apple had never been opened before, this broke the enchantment. And this long preamble about an evil witch and an apple is fundamentally that I think the best thing you can do as an indie dev is show people things that they haven't seen before, which encourages creativity and encourages risk-taking. Now, we are a weird indie narrative studio ourselves, so we do a lot of this. Obviously, we're kind of cognitively inclined to hope that this is a good strategy, but last week's real successes that didn't have any suggestion of those level of successes from the numbers that they were generating, I think is more proof that creativity is really good.
I agree, and I think this is if you are making a really big game, you want to make games that are like other games, unless you're really sure that you're doing right. But you're going to spend $100 million or something on it, then you don't want to spend $100 million on something too risky. And even if you do, you're not going to get somebody giving you that money. But
this is the Concord thing recently, isn't it? They produced, the AAA studio produced this amazingly polished, incredibly, probably brilliant game. But because it was quite like a lot of other games that came before it, it really didn't make the return that it needed, and it was closed down within something like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know.
Anyway, do you think it would have worked if it had been a clementine that you cut open?
I don't think you should be a writer, Alexis. You don't get this at all. Clearly, I don't even know where to begin.
What about a Satsuma?
Yeah, we got the juice all over his hands. And then which would have said children are sticky and kicked him out. So, no, they would have failed. Speaking of failure and scary things and evil, old, stereotypical women, our first game this episode that is new from the top 10 upcoming games on Steam is Granny Escape Together.
Are grannies stereotypically evil?
Well, I'm glad you asked me this, actually, because I was looking up the classic various stereotypes, and you've got like the maid and the crone and whatever else, and then the Madonna whore, the classic. And I think creepy old ladies is an established trope, actually, because once we can't have children and we're not hot anymore, what's the point? Might as well be evil.
Oh my god,
that's the vibe. That fundamentally, to be clear, everyone watching this is not what I believe, but this is an established motif in literature.
I think grannies are nice and give people peppermints.
My granny was lovely,
but not this granny.
But this granny does not seem to be lovely. This is a spooky jump scare horror game, co-op, as you can tell from the Escape Together subtitle, that looks exactly what you'd want in a spooky horror game. The one thing that I don't understand, and again, perhaps people watching this will know more than I do, is its relationship to another game, which is a series of games called Granny, which is made by a different developer and has different font. And I think this dev might have been heavily inspired by those games and then added co-op. And admittedly, co-op is something that the other dev didn't add, so that is a legitimate augmentation. But it does seem very similar to the other IP. So I'm not really sure what's going on here. But horror games tend to do very well on Steam. There is a sort of established thing of, if you are starting out on Steam, a horror game is a really great thing to start out with, because it gives you a kind of like multiplier boost of opportunity, because streamers like it and people are kind of quite up for picking it up and playing it. And if you have a really scary experience with a horror game, which you can do quite cheaply with jump scares, people remember it and tell their friends about it. Whereas if you're making, incredibly hard-hitting, poignant texture and stuff, that's kind of harder to get people excited about. But yes, so I am going to guess, looking at all of this stuff, it's only in English, which is a limiter, but horror, people like it. I think it will stream quite well. I'm going to guess 57 reviews week 1.
It reminds me of a game we saw a few eps back where, again, it was quite similar to an existing horror game. I think it was similar to Evil Corporation or something. And again, it was a solo dev who clearly was quite engaged and was on the forums and things. But it just it's I get the thing about horror games and making horror games, but it's a crowded market. I do always underestimate consistently how horror games do. You're always arguing for doing better, and I usually lowball them. I did notice, though, on this one, there is no mode where you can play Granny. A couple of people ask you about it on the forums, and a lot of these things, all the way back to Flee the Facility, thrive on an asymmetric mode, and there ain't one. So but it's got decent traction, and I think it might well benefit from having the same name as the other Granny franchise. So I'm going to guess 40 reviews week 1.
We will see. And if anyone knows anything about the relationship with other games, do let us know in the comments, because I couldn't see anything in any of the forums or the chatter about it. And normally, if a game looks very similar to another game, Steam users let you know.
Yeah.
So maybe they're like friends. I don't know. But that is Granny Escape Together. Now, moving on to something that I really couldn't get a handle on: Spire Horizon Online.
So this appears to be a solo dev. I looked at their site and they say me rather than us.
I'm sorry, a solo dev is doing an MMO?
Exactly my thoughts. I mean, it happens. There was quite a successful game last month, I don't know if you remember, that was a solo dev doing a multiplayer game. I
don't want to talk about Atlas.
And
I don't understand.
But it's like the MMO version of an existing single-player game with a co-op. So a key thing here is this some of the netcode issues have been worked out. I don't know if all the netcode issues have been worked out, because MMOs that might need sharding intelligently or might not have been sharded effectively are a whole different ball of bees from...
I'm sorry, what is sharding?
If you put 1 million players on the same server, the server will implode, turn to Newtonium. So generally, you will have, if you're playing World of Warcraft or something, you won't have every player in the same world in the same server. You have them in different servers for a start, and then generally, I don't know if WoW does this or if it ever did it, but a lot of games will have instances of the limited number of players in any given area, so you won't see other players who are in the game in the same area. It's just divided up. Gotcha. But this is all above my pay grade, because I've
made you explain something that you are not a master of.
But the key thing is I'm not a master of it, and a lot of solo devs have a lot of things they're not masters of, because you often want specialist developers for something like multiplayer. So
I'm astonished it's one person.
Yeah, I might have been someone stood. It may have said me, and they might have hired 10 other people, or she might have hired 10 other people, or whatever. But it appears to be a small company. It's an odd concept. You're a skeleton, right?
It's so much more than that. Okay, so firstly, the trailer's really long. I don't know why, but it is. And I watched the whole thing because I record footage for this, and I watch all the trailers. And the premise is you are a reanimated skeleton living in a sort of faux medieval town, and your best mate is a capybara who is weirdly not particularly animated, so always has this like lazy look of like dull disinterest in his eye. But anyway, he's your best mate, and then for reasons that are never explained, a sort of troupe of like evil skeleton magicians come through a void and want to capture the capybara. And then there's like a weirdly beautiful artistic bit in the trailer where you're falling with your mate the capybara through all these different like wormholes into different biomes. There's, you know, the sort of Chinese palace, and then there's like the wintry Christmas land, and then there's the like London in 1920s, and then there's one where you're falling through space in front of the Earth, where like a kind of Mass Effect ship disappears in the background, and it's like quite beautiful. And then it's like, Lamau, now you're a skeleton and you lost your capybara friend and you have to go find him. And that's the premise.
You say for reasons that's never explained, the skeleton magician's come through the gate. I'm intrigued that you didn't feel the skeleton and his capybara friend needed an explanation. You just took that as read.
Yeah, I was weirdly okay with that. Although I want to know what the capybara's name is, and I just don't know why they want. It's so weird. So that makes more sense that you've said it's a single dev, especially once I also discovered that this is an MMO version of an existing premium game, because this sounds to me like something that has like accreted over years and years of this developer's time into this like fundamentally Byzantine and bizarre experience. That is not a bad thing. Like I just said, that give people something new, and that's a really good starting point. But I have many questions, and I kind of want this to do really well, but I'm also would be surprised if it doesn't run into problems, especially if it's such a small team doing an MMO, because that's famously so difficult to pull off, and you need this kind of mass critical mass of other players. Okay, you're looking like I'm saying something stupid and you're going to say
no, not at all. No, I think it was just the thing my mouth did.
For some amazing KO riposte.
Sadly not, no.
Oh, okay. Well, basically, good luck to him. It's bizarre. 122 reviews week 1 is my estimate.
Yeah, I'm less optimistic because I'm always less optimistic than Lottie. And
hey, there's a brief shining moment after you've had an espresso where you're like,
that's true.
The world is great.
And I do worry about going from a co-op game to an MMO.
But also, all bets are off because of last week's.
I know. Well, I'm guessing 80.
Pick a number.
80 reviews week 1, and the capybara doesn't appear to have a name as far as I can tell. So
that's a big issue.
Going to name him Burgermeister Fishy Ways.
That might be his canonical name, based on everything else I've learned about this game. But yeah, bizarre. Good luck to you. In fact, it makes me want to say, "What the pack," which I think that's meant to be a pun. It's not totally clear.
Is it a pun?
I thought it was like what the F.
Well, it is like what the F. Does it make it a pun, or does it make it like a?
It makes it a highly coloured multiplayer game that I have never played anything like, but it looks to me a bit like Fall Guys.
It makes me feel tired and old looking at it.
Yeah, well, you talk about when you took your kid to go and see the Trolls movie.
I know. And there's everything rotating and glowing and pulsing and chanting.
Yeah, it's the closest you got to an epileptic fit ever.
Yeah. I felt like somebody put a hood over my head and the hood is full of LSD.
Not that that's what happened here, but anyway, it's launching to early access. It's a
I'm troubled by the one who sticking his tongue out.
Yes, licking is a thing. Anyway, so it's kooky, and I think they deserve credit for punch them, lick them, steal their chickens before throwing them overboard. I think there is a certain Gen Z aspect to this that people will enjoy, and presumably it will make squillions more money than we will ever make from our games. So fair dues. It has this really high follower count as well, so something's gone right. Like, people want this game.
Yeah.
Maybe they're Roblox people. And by that I mean children. Or maybe they are people with friends.
Are children people?
I mean, not legally. So yeah, it's doing well. I get a kind of Atlas vibe from this of like, this is something...
You pressed the button, don't you?
I absolutely did not press the button. This is a troll game. I'm going to have to mute that.
I think it adds to the atmosphere. Anyway, this is
chaotic fear.
This is as far as I can tell, a Turkish studio, or at least the forums full of people posting in Turkish. And I do have this anecdotal sense that the dice are loaded in some way I don't understand against Turkish developers. So I'm slightly less optimistic than I would be, given it's got very good traction. But I'm going to go in with a really healthy 200 reviews week 1 as my estimate.
And I'm estimating 273 because of that follower count, like I was saying. Now I'm going to close this page before it shouts at me again because I'm very upset. You done?
I'm done.
Okay, goodbye, what the peg. Please don't hurt me. Okay. Archons.
This is familiar Steam territory.
Yeah, I feel more comfortable with this. But it has a really unusual hook, which I want you to explain to me. Because I've not seen this before. And to me, it seems like a bad idea.
I mean, I find bullet hells much too stressful.
Just to enumerate, just to specify.
I'm getting there.
Okay, sorry.
A bullet hell where you control two characters simultaneously sounds incredibly stressful, but old and tired.
No, we have to make people excited by us. You're not old and tired. You're Gandalf, the White.
What? Before I fell into the hole.
Yeah, but one thinks the Balrog is sick.
Anyway, so this is a bullet hell game, sort of twin stick shootery thing. And you're controlling two characters simultaneously, and this has caused alarm and excitement on their forums. Clearly some people like it, clearly some people don't and find it stressful, and very sensibly a month ago they added local co-op, so you can have one person controlling each of the players. This looks well made. It looks like the people are making
Does it really polished.
Now what they're doing, I looked at their site and they made a point to say, we make the games we would like to play, which is the vibe. It just doesn't have much traction, so I don't think it will do especially well, but I think 40 reviews week one for a small studio first game is a good success.
Yeah, broadly speaking, I agree with everything. I like that they're called Bullet Hell Studios. I like that you know where you are and they're making Bullet Hell, and that implies confidence. I was really impressed by the quality of the trailer. Not only was it beautifully synced to the music, which is always a particular thing that I love, but the whole thing just looked really glossy and polished and and I know that if you're if you're making a Bullet Hell, everything has to be exactly responsive and polished. Otherwise, people get frustrated because you can get killed easily and you feel that's not fair. So that bodes very well, I think, and it looks great. It could be one of the games that we were talking about earlier, one of the games that actually benefits from the sudden surge of eyeballs when it gets visible on the Steam front page.
Horrible image.
I know, I'm sorry, it's just what
it's like is. Ocular jam.
That's worse.
Optic marmalade.
Okay, we're going to cut that now. We need What the Pack to shout at us again and drown out this grotesque conversation. But my point is, because it has a bit of buzz, everybody who's played the demo seems to really respond positively to it. There's a bunch of people in the forum saying, I played it and it's really amazing, really excited about this. That's a really positive sign. So maybe once more people hear about it, we will see an uptick. But just going on the numbers that it currently has, because I don't want to predict based on something that might happen, I am going to guess 63 reviews week one. But good luck to him.
Good luck to him.
Hypnosis of Corruption.
I'm very upset by this title. Why isn't it called Corruption of Hypnosis or Hypnosis Corruption? I mean, presumably it's translation from Japanese.
I was going to say, that's the key
point. This is Kagura again, who we know now are a publisher who...
A major Asian publisher, yeah.
Yeah, they scoop up bucket loads of... games from East Asia, translate them into English and sell them, and generally the games do quite small numbers, but presumably there's a lot of them, so they do well in aggregate. What do you think about this one, Lottie?
So it's got Doki Doki Literature Club vibes. It's doing the thing that lots of people like, which is the kind of creepy cute anime thing, which is, kawaii schoolgirls, but suddenly everyone's a murderer. So that's cool. I can't see huge amounts of buzz behind the scenes, so I don't think this will explode Steam. But it seems competently made, and if you like this sort of thing, this is another thing that you can play that's like the other things that you like playing. So I'm going to guess 25 reviews week one.
It's very demure, not in a TikTok way either. It's actually demure, I think, for a game that's about attractive young ladies being hypnotised. Often that goes in a particular direction, and it may well go in that direction, but there's not much of that visible in the
I don't get the sense it's a porn game.
No. So I'm going to suggest there is, if you will, an anti-dog uplift here. You always say that games with a dog in... Yeah. Don't do as well in release as the number of followers would suggest, because people see it, go, "Oh, dog," and then wishlist it, and then don't necessarily want to buy it when it comes to the day.
Yeah.
I think there's a similar effect with ladies with their more than their top button undone. People will sort of click it as a mammal hindbrain. I know, that's what I'm saying. So she doesn't.
Oh, I see.
So people, if she did, there'd be this mammal hindbrain spasm, and people would click wishlist. But if people have wishlisted this when she's got all clothes on, that possibly means a slightly more engaged interest with the subject matter.
Well, this is what I mean. I didn't mean to demean the game when I said the people who like it will like this. What I meant is, I think this establishes itself in an existing set of games, and for people who've played those sorts of games in the past and like them, this will attract them. So I
So
think
you've
it's a
said
good product market
I think
fit.
you're right. And I think you've said it much more concisely and cogently than me, but I was in love with the phrase anti-dog uplift, so I wanted to riff
No,
for a
that's
bit.
fair. I like that. Woof.
Anyway, but I'm still, all that said, because of the tormented melancholy of my wild Celtic soul, I always rate lower than you, so I'm going to go for 20 rather than 25,
Just to prove a point.
just to prove a point.
Well, good luck to your hypnosis of corruption.
Stop saying that.
Hypnosis of corruption.
Yes. Real shoot, brackets, body cam PvE.
Except it's not actually called Real Shoot brackets Body Cam PvE. It's actually called Real Shoot. They just put that in the title, presumably for
So there's a
SEO.
really successful French game
yes.
early this year
Are
called
you
Body
saying
Cam.
that you saw this and thought of Body Cam?
I was looking at the. It's a little bit of a journey.
'Cause I
actually.
did.
Me too. Yeah. So there was. I looked at the. So okay. So this is a hyper realistic single player first person shooter, and there was early this year a hyper realistic multiplayer first person shooter
Which did
called Body
incredibly
Cam,
well.
which did extremely well.
Something like 80,000 reviews.
And I noticed when I looked at the forums for Real Shoot brackets Body Cam PvE close brackets, somebody said, bless them, thank you so much for making a single player version of Body Cam. I am schizophrenic, so I really struggle with paranoia and other issues dealing with multiplayer. It's nice just to be able to shoot
bless
people
him.
without. Yeah. And then
I didn't think of that.
somebody else came in and said, well done, bro, but I'm glad for you, but this isn't the same developers. This is just the people who put presumably Body Cam in the title, hoping to pick up a bit of that enthusiasm. So,
But I don't want to be mean, so let's just go with heavily
I don't want
inspired
to be
by
mean.
it.
So people in the forums are saying asset flip. Other people in the forums are saying it's buying assets on the store and putting them in your game, which is fine. Go cry about it on Twitter, brah. And
Yeah, I never really understand why it's looked down upon to buy assets. Because I'm like, but somebody really talented made them. So don't you want that in your game? I don't really get it.
I don't know if I was writing a book and I half the pages were written by somebody
Well, yeah,
else.
but if the point of the game is the art and you bought
No, I
assets,
know.
I get it. But
So
you know?
that's the thing. I think people disagree. People have different expectations about what the point of the art is. If you're making a game that is set in a hyper-realistic cityscape, then shit, buy assets. Why not?
painstakingly texturing concrete for 8 years.
Yeah. Also, of course, I think is if you see assets looking vaguely familiar, you don't know whether somebody has purchased the assets on the store and has supported a thriving developer ecosystem, whether they have ripped them from another game, or whether they just made assets that look quite the same, because a lot of things look quite the same. And gamers are not always immediately supportive, empathetic, and willing to extend the benefit of the doubt.
I think Real Shoot, open brackets, Body Cam PvE, close brackets, is going to get the most sympathetic and thoughtful Steam players
I think this
on the
one will
market.
probably do okay. So it looks. I don't know what the actual gameplay's like, but it looks pretty. I noticed it's set down the road from us.
Is it?
Well, there's lots of different varieties, New York and along. But yeah, there's literally a screenshot that says Woolwich Cafe.
No!
Yes,
Okay, well, we don't actually live in Woolwich, so don't come and find us.
but it's the
Oh my
next.
god!
Yeah.
Okay, yes, you are correct. How funny. He's got the right bin. I can confirm that's what Woolwich bins look like. I agree. I think this is a game that is going to benefit from the take a punt motif on Steam, which is it looks fantastic. Bodycam did really well. I think everybody who sees this game is going to think this is like Bodycam. And if you like the idea of Bodycam, especially if you like the idea of Bodycam but single player, then you will presumably take a punt on this if the price point is not insane. I would say also, because it is a shooter and it's a very impressive looking shooter, this is just a sort of Steam friendly game generally. Steam tends to like first-person shooters because it's a very traditional PC genre.
I noticed the developers, Westech, appear to be Ukrainian, and I think if you are ever going to release a hyper-realistic looking, janky first-person shooter game,
as a Ukrainian,
the time to do it is immediately after Stalker 2 has come out.
Yes.
So this is always one of our firm opinions is that people worry when they see that somebody's making a game like their game. And of course, it's not always a good thing, but generally there's a sort of a halo effect where we bring up other similar games, which increase the level of interest in it, and people finish the game at some point.
So yeah, I think this will. It's not a terribly active developer. I can't see them making loads of updates and engaging with the audience, but maybe they're busy finishing the game, which is legitimate. But yes, I do think that people will try this if the price is not insane. So I'm going to estimate 154 reviews week 1, but I would not be surprised if it did significantly better than that.
Alrighty.
What did you say how many?
Oh, sorry, 200. 200.
You're higher
Nice
than me.
big round 200. I am.
Is it because you just played a bit of Stalker 2? Is it working on you?
It's too frightening.
Stalker 2?
Yeah.
It is really scary.
Yeah, now I've been in... Oh, no, you know what? I've been talking about another time. Right. Tower of Musk. Okay. Talk about feeling old and tired. Tower of Musk.
Okay, so explain this to me, because...
No. No. There is an Angie baby, and there is a tree deer, and you have a gun. And it's the 1980s, but it's survival horror.
I don't think it's the 1980s.
It says 1980s in the...
It says it inherits the charm of 1980s dungeon
Yes,
RPG.
but it doesn't say Angie baby. Nor does it say tree
so
deer.
what it sounds like is you need to go and see a doctor. I have no idea why you're stringing these clauses together.
There is Angie baby in the game. Everyone wears a mask.
But it's not set
and
in
one
the...
person
it's
wears
not
an Angie baby mask.
Where's the shoulder pads and the big hair? It's not set in the 1980s.
The tree deer has big hair.
And listens to the New Romantics.
Yes.
Right. Okay, we're going to disagree about this off camera, but this is...
It's the essence of 1980s dungeon RPGs.
Do you have any actual feedback on this game? Or
Yes,
thoughts?
I think it's a really interesting little bomb. There's obviously a lot of brio here is the word that I'm looking for.
Yes, I do think it's bold, which I really applaud them for.
But it just doesn't have any traction. And I think you said earlier... I don't think you said earlier. I think something else, which I will now elucidate by repeating what you said earlier.
You can pretend I said something earlier.
You said you said Angie baby, and you also said that it's important and beneficial as an indie developer to be distinctive on Steam. I think it's absolutely true. But there's distinctive can mean you're going to make a game about
an Angie baby.
Well, or you're putting herring inside a greengrocer and then hiding. That's distinctive. But it's hard to see the pitch there.
What would you call that game?
I think...
Surprise Fish?
Angie Baby. And you see, that would confuse people, wouldn't it? They'd be distinctive.
It's astonishing we sell any copies.
But this is the art of it, right? All you could need to do is be distinctive. People would just roll dice and do ad-lib games and then we'd all outsell each other. But you need something that has a pitch that people can understand and appeal by. And I think it's difficult to see the pitch on this, and it doesn't have much traction. People are confused by it.
I'm very confused by everything you just said, but I agree with you. I think
I like it. I hope it does well. I don't think it will.
I think well, again, haven't played it obviously. I watched the 2 trailers that are up there. The gameplay to me looked a little bit simplistic and a little bit generic. Now that might be desperately unfair. Might be doing something really interesting, and it just hasn't portrayed it particularly. But I think that is going to be a slight problem for it. I do think the art style is really lovely. It's got kind of cell shading-y thing going on. And this is why I was asking about the 1980s dungeon RPGs, because we have seen previously that when there is an established kind of nostalgic drive for a particular type of game that isn't made anymore, if somebody can do that and give that feeling to people who haven't had it since they were playing games 20 years ago, then that can do very well. I don't know if this has that stuff. I just think it looks cool. And I agree. I think it's unusual and made by somebody who is really making it because they love it. But sadly, it just doesn't seem to have buzz, like you're saying. So I am going to guess 32 reviews week 1. And you were going to guess?
When it comes to escape, deer have no equal. Tears of fear moisten their noses and they sense danger.
I don't want them to have tears of fear.
Well, then you're not going to buy this game, and so I think it's going to get 12 reviews week 1.
What, and if I bought it, it would get 13?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, devs. I don't want your tears of
sadness. But if you reviewed it, you wouldn't get a magic review because you bought it.
Well, thank you for clarifying that. That's
you,
really increased everybody's enjoyment of this video. Moving on, Zort. This is a weird one. Okay, so Zort, as you can tell from the concept the capsule art, is following in the grand old and very successful tradition of basically spooky mascot games. They probably got a better name, but that's what I'm calling them. So these are games like Five Nights at Freddy's, Poppy Playtime, Finding Frankie. This has co-op multiplayer, which is always good because people love playing horror games with their friends. It's basically hilarious if you can freak out your friend in any situation. So that's a big upsell. I think it will stream well because everybody can do fun reaction videos, and often, like me, people are too cowardly to play horror games but are kind of interested in what's going on. So I if there's a new big horror game out, I will never play it because I am a total coward, but I will genuinely sit there for 8 hours and watch a no commentary playthrough, or if I particularly like somebody, a reaction one. So yes, I think those are all mega plus points for this game. It is coming to EA, like we said before. That tends to be a bit of a depressor, but I think with these sorts of games, a little bit of jank is expected.
Exactly.
So I don't think that will be a huge problem. In fact, it might be a benefit because EA games tend to be cheaper than they are at 1.0. So if you're looking for a cheap, fun thrill of the likes of, Five Nights at Freddy's, Puppet Playtime, etc., then this might be exactly what you're looking for to play with your mates over the Christmas holidays. So it also has a lot of buzz behind the scenes. It also has a lot of supported languages. So I am going to guess a very hefty 313 reviews week one, because I think this is going to do well.
Very upset by the player models. They sort of look like a cross between the Teletubbies and the Bloodsuckers from Stalker.
Oh, I was thinking they look like Smurfs after Chernobyl.
Yeah, all those things.
But that adds to the creepy atmosphere.
It does. No, I think this one will do well. I'm going to read to you a comment from the forums as follows. This game is the best ever. 1, corn dog out of 8, laughs, farts, and fun times ahead. He has mysteriously, poob is not the way, THER, to a woman's heart. So I think we can all get behind that. And consequently, I'm going to give it 300 reviews, week one prediction.
Wait, I have so many questions. Do you think he knows the way to a woman's heart and he's just leaving us cryptic clues to help out his fellow man?
I don't know, because there's no punctuation in it. So it might be fun times ahead, poob is not the way to a woman's heart.
Oh, you think he's ended with a sort of rhetorical flourish? I really hope there's no excrement in the game or farting. I don't find toilet.
And again, I found the game is the best ever. 1 corn dog out of 8, or is it the game is the best ever 1? Corn dog out of 8 laughs, farts.
There's much to unpack in this.
Yeah.
But we're not going to do that. We're going to move on because...
Yeah, 300 reviews week 1.
That's better. Good luck, scary mascot game launching to early access. Okay, this one is up my street. Marry a Deep One, Innsmouth Simulator.
Yeah, I saw the title of this and I thought, this is going to be some, do you want to smooch a frog, lol, dating simulator nonsense. But it's not.
It's so full of joie de vivre, my love.
I'm very
what about
bored
your Christmas bonhomie?
of cynical winky dating simulators. I was never really a dating simulator to begin with, though, because I hate people. But I like deep ones.
That's not true.
Like
everyone watching this, he was watching the cat earlier and being really nice, and he got up really early to make a special breakfast for his kid who's having a bit of a tough time. So he does actually really like people. Don't listen to him.
Well, I put toast to my kid and she stops talking for a bit. So I like deep ones. They don't talk. You don't even have to put toast in them.
Oh my god!
Look, okay. So this is I think a really interesting game by clearly a small dev who's put an absurd amount of thought and detail into it and is very engaged on the forums. Yeah, he is. He's popping in there, or she is popping in there and saying, "I'm sorry, this is a bug. It'll be fixed in half an hour." So you can smell the love coming off this one, and this is the Ica, and I think it will do 20 reviews week 1. It just doesn't have much traction, and it's got this I've seen this sort of thing before. It models people's attitude to other people, and you've got this whole sort of social simulation there. That works for your Crusader Kings 3, and the whole thing is wrapped up in a really slick presentation with lots of other things to do, and it's been play tested. It almost never works at this level. It's just hard to collapse that into a satisfying experience. But I really hope this person makes a second game, because there's a lot going on. There really is.
It's really interesting.
It's the one game of this week I've wish listed, so I'll leave a review. Unless it's bad, in which case I won't leave a review. Unless I forget.
Don't leave mean reviews for devs. It makes them so sad. yeah, I looked at this and I just thought that there's an artist behind this. They're doing something interesting. They're not just representing the game. They're making really interesting choices. Even the first screenshot with the way they've sort of represented the waterside village, it's just fun. And a Cthulhu dating sim is something I've seen before, but this has done something in an interesting way. It's quite captured the sense of the Lovecraftian horror, because it's actually really unpleasant to think that you're essentially like choosing who to breed.
That's the thing, they could have played it for laughs, but they've obviously engaged with the source material.
And one of the problems with the Lovecraftian games that are often out there is they're often not actually very Lovecraftian in the original sense of the literature. It doesn't mean they're bad games, but it does mean that if you've come from the books and you want that same sense of kind of out the corner of your eye unease, a lot of the traditionally Lovecraftian games don't give you that. And there is another Lovecraftian sim actually that I think did very well, which goes down the route that you might expect of having actually a kind of bunch of vaguely sexualized Cthulhuoid things you can smooch, and it's kind of funny because it's absurd, but also it's a dating sim in a more traditional sense of the word, whereas this one is literally like eugenics, which is much more Lovecraftian. So yeah, I think it looks really interesting. I think the devs should be really proud of themselves, but sadly I also suspect it's not going to do huge numbers. I wonder slightly about the timing too. I think maybe the better time to release it would have been over October, during the Halloween times, when people are a bit more into a Halloweeny game. It doesn't mean people aren't going to play spooky games now, as we've just seen. We think Zort is going to do super well. It's just that was an opportunity that they didn't capitalize on. So yeah, I don't know what happened there, but I would love this person to do much better than the numbers suggest. So I'm going to guess 26, but good luck, and you have my
vibes. Release date. I think if they had done it around Halloween, then they'd be competing with a lot.
They would, but there's seasonal content for a reason.
No, that's
people
true.
Are in moods, and it's also an opportunity to leverage things like press, who are doing like the spookiest 5 games that launching this week, whereas over Christmas. And I know that press is not a huge propellant of sales, but every little helps, especially when you are a starter dev.
No, you're right. I think also, I surmise, I have absolutely no basis for this, that they've had this, apart from knowing the way small dev works, that they've had this in production for a while and they were really keen to get it out this year. And this is pretty much the last moment at which you can get things out before we run into Christmas releases.
That's true.
So again, I'm going to assume that surmise is correct, on no evidence, and praise them for having got their shit together and got the review out. But I'm going to guess,
and it looks great.
20 reviews week 1.
Good luck, Simulinati. I hope you do magnificently. And now our final game of this last episode of 2024, and I think this is an appropriate topic to end on. Road Maintenance Simulator 2 Winter Services. Would you like to push snow off a road?
Yes.
Well, you are not alone. I think this will do quite well.
But then I know I'll get confused and sunk in ennui when I try.
This is why you will not
because
make it.
Because there's always more snow.
There is always more snow, but that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And every snowflake is unique.
Well, the last one that leans on the tip of your cold nose, you stare up at the uncaring sky through your frozen open eyes.
We should totally make like a really miserable road simulation game where it's like Euro Truck Simulator, but you also have depression. Buy now! Out in stores! Okay, we're not going to do that.
Anyway, that's not game 3, folks. Might be game 5. So this is...
I will give people actually some information now.
Yes.
Okay, this is a very successful developer with 30,000 followers on Steam, which doesn't sound like much necessarily, but actually is really hard to get to, so that is a really impressive number. It's much bigger than ours, certainly. And they have a history of making sim games. That's what they do. So they evidently know what they're doing, and they also have a big established simulator-focused publisher. So again, publishers are never a guarantee of success, but if you have a focused publisher who can put your game in front of likely people who might like it, that's always beneficial. There is surprisingly little activity in the forums or in the response to their news posts. I don't know why that is, but that gives me slight pause. Otherwise, I would say this has, potential to do very well. It is seasonal and topical without being sort of chin, 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 Christmas, let's all have Santa on everything, which is quite fun. It's a sequel, which tends to be helpful. That's why we get constant sequels in films like Moana 2, because once you've established an original, you can then broadcast that more effectively to an existing audience, so that might boost it. But the numbers behind the scenes are not massive, even though I think this looks like a really competently made game that is within an existing niche where people will either like it or not. So I'm going to guess 35 reviews week 1.
I'm slightly lower. You'll be amazed to hear. It is a sequel, but the previous game is a mixed, and it's only got.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, 148 something like that reviews after being out for quite some time. So I'm going to guess 26 reviews week 1. I think it's just it's competently made, which is quite specialised, and people like farms, they like trains, and they like aeroplanes. But I don't think I've ever heard anybody really express any enthusiasm for an attachment for pushing Snarf around. But clearly there are these people out there, but I think they're just in a minority compared to people who like the choo-choos.
What about Homer Simpson's fun snowplow song though? Mr. Plow, that's my name again is Mr. Plow.
It's unfortunate that's such a compelling and faithful rendition that you're probably going to get us auto-banned by YouTube's music detection algorithm.
Hey, well, that's a good reminder, because I think it was a year ago, last Christmas, that we got a letter before action from the famously litigious owner of the Choose Your Own Adventure game IP.
Oh, yeah.
Who goes around basically targeting small devs who'd make narrative games where you essentially choose your own adventure, and then she tries to sue them. But we didn't get sued because we took that Choose Your Own Adventure tag out of our game. We're now best friends, Vanessa, if you're listening to this. So Merry Christmas to you too.
But he's still quite surly about this.
I just thought at Christmas. Anyway, so that's what's going on behind the scenes and all the developers that you love. Those are the games for this week. These are the games for the year. So yes, let us know if you have
Wildcards.
Oh yeah, Wildcards. Okay, hang on. I'm going to Bagsy the Cthulhu one.
I had one in mind. I'm going to Bagsy Zort.
You're going to Bagsy Zort?
I'm going to Bagsy Zort.
So you think that's going to do even better than we already think it's going to do?
I think because what I was saying earlier about all my sort of confused metaphors about inappropriate names for statistical artifacts and various combustible petroleum products. I think if it's co-op, it can go places.
That's true. That is true.
Zazazoom.
Just can't do co-op ever. So I guess we're stuck here.
Making tiny. Do you want to mention the advent calendar? We've got an advent calendar going, both in Book of Hours and Lottie's updating it on the website. So because video lasts forever, and you might be watching this as some sort of post-human, what was the phrase? Surge of eyeballs in 2093, in which case this is useless to you. But if you happen to watch it in December 2024, go to weatherfactory.biz and enjoy our advent calendar with all the stuff in it.
Because despite his pan demeanour, we actually do love Christmas, and we actually do want to make it a bit more sparkly and fun.
Joyeux Noël.
You're not on camera.
I know. I didn't know.
This is such a Weather Factory send-off. Do something fun and interesting people haven't seen before, and don't worry about the polish. It's fine. See you next year, everybody. Polish. See you next year. Thanks for watching.